Hello, good morning, welcome. I am Samuel Trapp. Why does it feel so echoey and loud in here? What is happening? I'm not sure I like this. Maybe I need to turn down the sound. At any rate, it is a happy Thursday, isn't it? Here we are on Thursday, June the 18th, coming to you live from the Lake Ozark Real Estate of the Art Studio. I'm Samuel Trapp. Please feel free to phone in 573-746-8020 if you'd like or so desire. You can always listen to us live at damradio.com/live or go back in the past if you like living in the past and go back to damradio.com/podcast to get the latest versions, or way back in the Wayback Machine. You can go further and further back as far as you'd like. Well, as long as it's not longer than 2 years. You can go back. Or you can go to internationalflavor.com and pick up all these hilarious moments and listen to them in the privacy of your own sitting room. Could be fun. Or your vehicle, or however it is that you happen to be joining us in today. So, I want to chat. Why is it still echoing? Why am I echoing, people? Nobody wants to echo. Except Elvis Presley. Could I have a little more echo in my voice? That was always fun. Let's see. We're going to begin at the beginning, a very fine place to start. So all of the talk, of course, these days of trouble and gloom are about how Sam needs to get his fuel prices lower. He doesn't like paying $4 a gallon for gas. And so the world revolves around this key question in the life of a normal, average white man, let's call me. I am the average white. Well, of course, I'm no longer average because I'm old, but I'm the average height, I'm the average weight, I'm the average... I don't know, income level. I'm just the average, Mr. Average. And I happen to be white, so I am the average white man. You want to approach somebody on the street, get the opinion of the average white man? Well, you call me, and that's exactly what you're going to get, the opinion of the average white dude, who's no longer average because I'm freaking old, as my birthday yesterday pointed out to me. Let's see. I had one beer in celebration. Now that ought to tell you how non-average I am and how lame my birthdays have become. No, that's not true. I had a wonderful birthday. It was a party in every respect of the word party. And I indulged on one beer. It was a log boat, should you wish to know for sure. I'm normally a Stella dude, but they didn't have any. It was kind of odd. At any rate, let's talk about these 14 points of victory that isn't, in my humble opinion. I think we're going to be, you better get in for the long slog because it's not going to come up. My question was always, can somebody just list these 14 points for me so I can find them? So I've done it. I've put it together. I've found the 14-point list that allegedly was signed by both parties. That is never going to work because there are things in it that certain folks, Israel, aren't going to agree with. And so they're going to breach them, which means that then Iran has to breach them. We already got the neocons speaking out against it. We got people saying they're not going to do. So let's look at the outside America viewpoint. Let's take the point of view of those folks who are not in the United States. Let's go abroad, as we sometimes do at International Flavor, and hear what the folks that live elsewhere are hearing or being told by their propagandistic media. We have our propagandistic media, which completely lies to us, hasn't told us the truth ever. Suppose that'd be accurate. Is that an exaggeration? If I told you once, I told you 1,000 times, never to exaggerate. Let's see here. But the outside America framework is simple, what they're saying. This is not an American victory, okay? Nobody believes it to be, including yours truly. That's me. It's a battlefield and energy crisis settlement is what this is. So the battlefield sucks. We need to change the battlefield. Energy is suffering. Sam's paying $4 a gallon for gas, and he doesn't like it, and so he is suffering. We need to change the narrative is what we have to do. This is all narratives, just like in Ukraine, which we'll get to in a minute. Probably not a minute. We'll probably have a song in between there somewhere, something vocal. Let's see. But it's not a victory. This is dressed up like it's some kind of great diplomatic victory. It isn't. This is the same old crap. American version is, it's a peace deal. We're going to force these guys to take it. Yep, that's how peace works. You force them, right? The Iranian-Russian versions, along with China, along with India, along with even Al Jazeera, are saying, not so, Ghost Rider. Washington was forced to recognize limits because America now has them. Okay, we have limits. They have to reopen the path to sanctions relief, so much so that they either believe that sanctions don't work anyway, or they are figuring out how to sell them better, because they're not selling very well, sanctions. And people are having to accept that Iran's nuclear question is going to be negotiated separately over time rather than solved by bombing. Kommersant says that that's a Russian newspaper, that the deal includes immediately reopening the Strait of Hormuz, a U.S. willingness to unfreeze Iranian foreign assets, and around $25 billion. They want to halt Iranian nuclear expansion and temporary U.S. suspension of oil sanctions. Okay? It says this arrangement is supposed to proceed in two stages. First, the 14-point memorandum, then 60 days of negotiation toward a final end-of-war arrangement. So, the stuff that Russia will not agree to on the Ukrainian side, they won't agree to a ceasefire because all it does is give you time to rearm. Iran is accepting because this will give the United States and Israel time to rearm, wherever they can bring the things from before. And this is not stopping. It'll be twisted in another fashion simply in 2 months. That's what's going to happen. Axios says that and it put out this alleged full 14-point memorandum as given to them by a senior U.S. administration official. Axios says the MOU declares the war is over. They've been declaring that for a while. War's over. That way, when it starts again the next day, they don't have to worry about war powers or anything like that. They can just, it was over. I quit drinking. I haven't had a drink since, I quit yesterday. I stopped drinking. Well, maybe I'll start again at 5 p.m. I don't know. Who am I? What am I, predicting the future now? Come on. What if I start drinking again? It could be a horrible scenario for the world if I do, but I'm telling you, for now, I've quit. I no longer drink. So there you have it. Just like there are no longer sanctions, just like the 14-point memorandum that's going to unlock the Strait to Hormuz. They're going to be, oil will be flowing, so we can watch my prices go down to $3.69, but then go back up to $4.39, because this is the world we live in. This is how it works, okay? Let's see. U.S. has to lift its blockade. We have 60 days of nuclear talks. Only with Iran, by the way. Ukraine, skip those guys. They can have a nuclear bomb if they want one. Finland, jump on in there. Get yourself nuclear weapons all you want, even though you too have signed the non-proliferation agreement or the Budapest Accords if you happen to be Ukrainian. However, if you're England, you can have discussions, and all the crap that people bitch about with Iran, we don't have to bitch about or even discuss if it's Ukraine, because Ukraine, they're the good guys, right? They're white. They're not Muslim. They could be Jewish, could be Pravoslaviansky. We don't know. Then it doesn't matter. They're the good people. Look at them. They have a blue and yellow flag. Therefore, they're good. Non-proliferation does not apply to people with stars on their flag, like a great big blue one on a white background. Non-proliferation doesn't apply to them. They don't have to agree to it, and nobody says a word. But by God, if you happen to wear a burqa or a set of robes, well, holy crap, why would we give you a nuclear weapon? Why would you be allowed to develop them with your own scientists even? That just can't be allowed. You know, you're not Jewish. You're not. What do they call him on that other channel, the old Green Goblin? They call him the little Churchill. You're not little Churchill. And they call Macron little Napoleon. Isn't that wonderful? So the same deal is being talked about with everybody. And the 14 points allegedly are as follows, as near as I can discover from what Axios and company and other searches around trying to figure out what they are. The end of military, point number one, the end of military operations. U.S. Iran and their allies declare an immediate and permanent, just like I quit drinking last night. Permanent end to military operations on all fronts. Here's the kicker, including Lebanon. Okay, including in Lebanon. This is bigger than a narrow U.S.-Iran ceasefire, meaning as soon as Israel, which we know they will, bombs or attacks inside of Lebanon again, which they will, probably today. They aren't going to wait. They're just going to do it. Then the 14 points are suddenly invalid, and it's all a bunch of crap, and everybody starts bombing each other again. Okay, number two. These are touchy-feely things. The end of military operations. Okay, they're over. But they may start again tomorrow. Okay. Respect for sovereignty. My ass. Respect for sovereignty. Unless you happen to be the Republic of Iran. Okay. Both sides agree not to interfere in each other's internal affairs and to respect territorial integrity. Oh, yeah. Except for missiles. And unless your name happens to be Israel, they didn't have to sign on to this, by the way. So this is not. Then there's a 60-day deadline. Oh, yeah, deadlines aren't fluid, are they? The final deal must be negotiated within 60 days. Quote, comma, open quote, unless both sides agree to extend it, period, close quote. Unless both sides agree to extend it. Mm-hmm. But there are more than two sides. The U.S. doesn't control Israel. Nobody controls Israel. Israel does what Israel's going to do, which means they're going to bomb Lebanon and continue. Ready? Number 4, U.S. naval blockade will be lifted. The U.S. will begin removing the naval blockade immediately and fully end it within 30 days. U.S. forces must move away from Iran's proximity within 30 days after the final deal. So all of these what ifs, if this, then that, and that's a biggie. So number 4 is a pile of crap too. Number 5, Hormuz reopened. Here's a load of steaming cow dung for you. Iran agrees to arrange safe commercial passage. We will arrange, think of this, we will arrange safe commercial passage through the Strait of Hormuz for 60 days without charge while technical obstacles and mines are addressed. Well, they aren't going to remove them. No, screw that. We're going to leave those there. Insurance companies will go, you assholes aren't going through here. You'll blow up. And the U.S. isn't going to move them. Iran may at some point, but why jump ahead when there's so many things that are up in the air yet? We have to hedge our bets, which everything so far, the first 4 has been a hedge. Number 5 is definitely a hedge because there's a lot of people talking about that they're going to charge between Oman and Iran, get this, an environmental fee. How are you going to complain about $1 million environmental fee? We have to keep this place clean down here. You need to, it's Oman and it's Iran. Everybody else charges environmental fees or straight up tolls, tariffs. Not tariffs, tolls that they would charge. So why not charge an environmental fee? That door's been left open. Here's the biggie that the neocons are all up in arms about: the $300 billion economic plan, which basically is reparations. Okay, we bombed the crap out of Iran, and somebody needs to give them $300 billion. The U.S. and its regional partners, meaning everybody else is paying this, not the U.S., will develop a reconstruction economic development plan for Iran worth at least $300 billion. This is Trump. This is the deal, Trumpster, in my humble opinion. You know, he wanted to buy whatever he was buying. What was he buying? With the Palestinians, he was buying their whole homeland and going to turn it into, Trump Tower 87 or something. That he was, look at this. We can make this great down here. We'll just knock over all this. I'll buy it all. Look at this. And you guys can rent from me. Wouldn't that be fantastic, Palestine? That'll be great. Remember his deal about that when he flew over to Israel? It was like, man, we could really make this nice. Yeah, well, that's the plan now for Iran. Why don't you just buy it? I'll buy Iran. And then that way I get to appoint the next Ayatollah, and that Ayatollah will work for me, right? Sanctions termination schedule. Okay, here's another one that this is going to be. We have a schedule. U.S. agrees to terminate sanctions under a schedule to be set in the final deal. Oh, yeah, that's a definite term. Term number 7 is definite. I mean, we have to schedule something during the 60 days, which could be extended upon agreement. And I assume the schedule can be extended too. And this is everybody involved is going to include the U.S., the UN Security Council. Oh, yeah, they're powerful. And the IAEA-related sanctions environment. But we don't have to do that if we're called Ukraine. Certainly don't have to do it if we're called Finland. We'll get to those in a minute. Number 8, nuclear weapons commitment. Iran reaffirms it will not procure or develop a nuclear weapon. Enriched uranium stockpiles are to be dealt with by mutually agreed mechanism. Now, this is funny. A mutually agreed mechanism with on-site downblending under IAEA supervision as the minimum method. Now, Iran, a large majority, in fact, of its power is nuclear in nature. Okay? So you're going to have some of these things, and you perhaps need to buy them, as we'll get to later on Ukraine. Nobody cares if Ukraine's doing the exact same thing, although they, too, are a non-proliferation area. They're trying hard to figure out how to get their own in the method that Israel got their own and then not be a part of the proliferation treaty. This is what's going on. It's going on in Finland, too. Just be surprised if Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania aren't trying to do the same thing, or if the U.S. just doesn't move them in and park them in there. That could be fun, too. Status quo during the talks. Iran does not expand its nuclear program. This is number 9. And the U.S. imposes no new sanctions and deploys no additional forces in the region. Number 10, oil waivers. The U.S. Treasury issues waivers that allow Iranian crude oil, petroleum products, banking, insurance, transport, and associated services. Well, that, could be a reasonably good one if it was a little more on the guarantee side. But it doesn't say, this one doesn't have a question mark by it. This one doesn't have a qualifier. This one says, we're giving oil waivers. Open the oil, and this is for Trumpster. Trumpster needs to knock the price of oil so that he can fool the Americans into thinking that after the elections, he's going to maintain these same things. All he's got to do is get through the elections. And the way to do that is have a victory. He can have a victory by claiming that he settled Iran. But in the next 60 days, that only pushes him till August. And it's going to be a bad deal for August because that puts him only 2 months away. So he has to weave a lot of, go through a lot of slalom poles in order to get to where he needs to get to have a successful midterm. And the chances of a decent midterm for him drop dramatically if the price of oil remains above $4 a gallon. So whatever he's doing, he's got to empty it, which means this is one of the important ones. oil waiver. You flood the market with oil, the price might go back down to where it was in February when Sam didn't bother him too much because he was only paying $2.50 a gallon for gas. You know, of course, a gallon of milk suddenly costs you $8, which is crazy. But there you go. It's nuts. All of a sudden, milk costs more than oil for a gallon. It's crazy. How can you stand it? It's a cow, you know, stinking up the environment. Maybe we should bottle methane and use that for the environment. That'd be great. Frozen funds, frozen or restricted Iranian funds will become available for use under procedures, quote, agreed during negotiations, period, close quote. Monitoring mechanisms. The sides establish an executive mechanism to monitor implementation of the MOU and future final agreement. How in the hell are you going to keep track of Israel? That's my biggest question for you. Who is going to do that? And who's going to judge? Because they do whatever they want. They get arrest warrants at the ICC. They get people afraid to leave the country. You know, sanctions everywhere. They kill individuals. They go out and target individuals in other countries, kill them. And that's okay. You know, I mean, nobody complains with that. If it was Russia doing that, I guarantee you people would have a problem with it. But if you happen to have Ukraine in the name of your country, or you happen to have Israel in the name of your country, you can do whatever the hell you feel like. And the U.S. is just going to go, yay, and wave a little flag. You know, you're going to wave the blue and yellow flag, or you're going to wave the white one with a blue star. That's what's going to happen. And nobody can question you. You're the good guys. Remember, you can do no wrong. There's no dictatorship in Ukraine. That's little Churchill there. He's not the Green Goblin. He's Churchill reborn to us. That's what's happening. Here we are to number 13. This is a key provision. Final negotiations will begin after implementation of certain key provisions. Ceasefire, blockade removal, Hormuz open, oil waivers, and frozen funds access. So these are 5 key provisions. Are any of them U.S. based? Any of them good for the United States? So negotiation will not begin, the 60-day negotiation won't begin until key provisions, until the ceasefire. But the ceasefire won't, all of them have to be, there's 5. Ceasefire, blockade removal, Hormuz reopening, oil waivers, and frozen funds access. The only ones that are there are, ceasefire for Iran, but they've only been retaliating as they get bombed. Every time they get bombed, they mirror it. Every time something, they aren't doing it independently, they're doing it in response. Go back and find one where they just started bombing again. They didn't do it. And finally, UN Security Council endorsement. Gee, the final deal is going to be endorsed by a binding UN Security Council resolution. Binding UN Security Council resolutions do not exist. They're never binding. They're not binding on Israel, ever. And rarely are they binding on the U.S. The U.S. ignores them when it feels like. Go back into the last 50 years, if not further, and check it out. See if there's ever one that the U.S. honored completely, that they weren't trying to impose their will upon somebody else. Okay? Because they don't do it. So, this basically looks like a reward escalation to me. Iran gets oil waivers, frozen asset, reconstruction, all before the nuclear issue is resolved. Israel objects already. Says the MOU doesn't solve ballistic missiles. They're still going to have them. Well, so do you. So what? They're not allowed to have ballistic missiles. Only we can have ballistic missiles. Because why? Because we have a white flag with a blue star. Regional armed groups and permanent dismantling of nuclear capabilities. Israel is bitching about all these things. The Israeli press criticisms, if you want to criticize them, and even in Israel, there's some critics. Wow, very few. But they say that Israeli officials are alarmed that the deal does not address Israel's war goals. Israel's war. These are important. Israel war goals. I saw something yesterday that said, I forget who it was, said that, I think it was Trumpster says, you need to remember that Israel wouldn't exist without the United States. Israel wouldn't exist. And in response, like a foreign minister, I don't think it was Netanyahu, but somebody said, I think you need to remember that the U.S. wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Israel. Now, that is bold. You know, then, and I don't know that I think Trump should have said that. I don't know. But it's pretty bold coming the other direction, isn't it? Basically saying, screw you, we're going to do what we want. Don't go pretending that Israel are the good guys here, because they're not. Let's see. They're alarmed. Why? Because nuclear weapons, regional attacks, and ballistic missiles all still exist. Well, I suppose from my point of view, even if it's a weak, crappy deal, which it is, we still need to try to support it. Why? Because it stops the war. It reopens the Hormuz, which it wouldn't have been closed in the first place if Israel and Israel hadn't convinced Trump to jump in and think they could engage in regime change the way he did in Venezuela, only worse. It'll lower energy risk, lower my gas prices. That's most important, remember. And moves the nuclear question back into a sort of a negotiation, which is where it was the day before the bombing took place. They were negotiating in good faith, appeared to be. And then the U.S. just said, oh, screw it. Israel says they're getting close to nuclear weapon. We better bomb them. So we do. The reasoning for this is complete horse crap all around, and Americans in great majority understand that to be true. I know I do. But from a non-American or a non-Western leaning view, the deal is a recognition that military pressure did not produce, Western military pressure didn't produce unconditional surrender. So, you know, the weakest link in this whole deal is enforcement. You know, what are you going to enforce? You have all these vague terms, you have these qualifiers. Status quo, what is that? Best efforts. Okay, I made my best effort to be a billionaire by age 18. Never made it. Oh, darn. Do you remember Steve Martin? Before every show, I like to do one impossible thing. And right now, I'd like to suck this piano stool into my lungs. And he takes a straw, puts it on top of the thing, sucks it in, goes, oh, darn. It didn't work. So I like to do one impossible thing every single day. I believe I will settle the war in Iran. Well, this is how you do it. The Hawks are going to say that Trump accepted a weak version, they're already saying it, by the way, of the old JCPOA. Iran gets relief now, and the harder nuclear issues are pushed into the future. They want to keep on bombing. That's beauty for them. This is Netanyahu. This is Lindsey Graham. These are all the Marco Rubios of the planet. Okay. I'd like to see the actual signed text. Somebody allegedly released it, but I haven't seen it. And I looked last night, couldn't find it. I'm sure it probably exists by now. They're supposed to release it tomorrow. It's supposed to be signed. It's going to be a steaming pile of cow dung when it is signed. So I'm not sure I'd want to sign it. So I say this is not peace, but leverage frozen onto a piece of paper. Like this shows what leverage is from the Iranian point of view. So the deal isn't at all about trust. It's about exhaustion. Americans don't want to be here. Oil. Americans don't want the prices up. Shipping. It's this BS with the shipping and all those ships being locked in the wrong end of Straits of Hormuz. It's nuclear delay and the beginning limits of America to coerce people into power. That is what is going on, friends and neighbors. We'll get back to that in a little bit. We're going to tie Ukraine back in, Ukraine and Finland, and a couple of articles that I was telling you about. That Finland, and how long is this article? This is a short one, so I'm going to share it with you. Finland shreds the nuclear weapons ban. This came out this morning, okay? The country's parliament has paved the way for NATO nukes to be deployed in Finland, okay? Finland has a long-standing ban on nuclear weapons and allows them to be transported through or held on its territory. But the Finnish parliament claims this move will strengthen the security, and I say this is now a target for nuclear strikes, Finland. Finland's parliament voted on Wednesday to amend the country's Nuclear Energy Act and Criminal Code to allow import, transit, supply, and storage of nuclear weapons on its soil. The measure passed by 125 votes to 61. Defense Minister Antti Hakanen celebrated the result, saying on social media that this historic reform strengthens the security of Finland and of NATO as a whole. The removal of the ban comes 3 years after Helsinki renounced its decades-long policy of military neutrality and joined NATO. All it took was 3 years. Finland joining the U.S.-led military bloc cratered its relations with Russia, and it shares a 1,340-kilometer border. Earlier this year, Moscow cautioned Helsinki against repealing its nuclear ban, saying it could lead to an escalation of tension on the European continent. And by deploying nuclear weapons on its territory, Finland is beginning to threaten us, Russia. And if Finland threatens us, we will take appropriate measures. Finnish President Alexander Stubb, a Russian hawk whose government has encouraged Kiev's use of Finnish arms against military targets also on Russian soil, insists he has no plans to permanently host nuclear weapons. My ass. That's what I say. My ass. Why change it if you don't have the plans to do it? Friggin' liar. Or politician, oh, geez. Just like the beer analysis, I quit drinking last night at about 6 o'clock. That's it, That's it. It's over. Finland is interested in participating in a French scheme that would potentially see French fighter jets armed with nuclear weapons stationed at its air bases, said Prime Minister Petteri Orpo earlier this month. France has 290 nuclear weapons, approximately, warheads. And Emmanuel Macron has said he intends to increase that number and position that air bases in friendly countries in a strategy of what he calls advanced nuclear deterrence against Russia. In Helsinki, European Parliament candidate Armando Mima described the lifting of the ban as a big historical mistake for Finland. This is a highly regrettable decision that undermines security of Finland and the entire world, by the way. And this is coming to you from an arms control guy who was involved in the INF Treaty, getting rid of the huge threats of the Soviet Union, the United States, storing nuclear weapons, pointing them at each other and upping the ante. And here these a-holes are doing it again. They're doing it again. France and Macron and these people have 10% approval ratings in their own freaking country. And this is what they're trying to do. And it is regrettable. It's not going to make Finland any safer. It's going to make Finland a target for nuclear strikes, which they never were before. Russia's posture, and by the way, the bulk of, radiation drift after a nuclear explosion is going to blow to the west. It's going to blow over Europe. That's why I saw Ukraine, where did it blow? It blew into Europe. Nuts. Russia's posture is going to change drastically after this irresponsible decision, is the end of that quote. And that's completely accurate. This is crap, world. So there was something else, because we're going to circle back to that nuclear idiocy when we get to Ukraine, because we've talked about it with Iran. Now we brought up Finland. But in between there, I wanted to talk about Starlink. You know what, though? I think before we do that, we're going to play us a little bit of a song. It's going to be, I like to listen to... what they call it, deep house and stuff like that. That is some kind of an interesting musica that they play in the background. And there's stuff that I just happen to like. And I found one more again in my history that we're going to go back to and see, because that is what we enjoy. We'll get past the Ometotikan. I listened to them again. And here's a very nice one, a vocal trance piece for you. And we're going to begin at the beginning for you. Hold the phone, and we'll get right there. I like that. Can't tell you why. I just do. But I like listening to some of that vocal trance, and that one is female vocal trance. 2026. Pretty good stuff. Anyway, I've followed that kind of thing for a very long time. I like to go to other countries and find interesting, like Trance Nation or any of those places, and they have them in large parks. And you go to them. I've been to some pretty damn cool ones with some very, very big names. And you don't pay the same. Well, of course, you got to fly there and be there anyway, but it doesn't cost what it costs over here, not remotely. So it's a worthwhile trip, let's put it that way. And that is Female Vocal Trance 2026, Vocal Sonus. You can find them on YouTube, should you feel the urge. Let's see. Where are we going to go from here? Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Isn't that Alan Parsons always asking that question? Where do we go from here, in fact? I think that it is time. We've already begun at the beginning. Now we have to go to the middle. Where are we on the Starlink? So get this. There's been, and I've been following it for probably a week now, in the southeastern, I suppose, areas of Crimea, at least on the side of the where they're just coming down. There's major supply lines through there for Russia that are behind the lines, way back along the edge of the Black Sea, and the Ukrainians have been attacking trucks, gas stations, oil refineries, supply lines, everywhere in there. It has been just bombing the crap out of it, really damaging Russian logistics in the area. And remember me talking to you a little bit about the discussions on it in front of Vladimir Vladimirovich when they're talking about these, the soldiers were there last weekend talking to him about drone frequencies and being able to knock out particular drones. Well, I used to be, when I was in the military, you either have tactical assignments or strategic assignments. And I had a tactical assignment, which means basically your support for tankers, your support for armored cavalry, your support for, we happen to be support for the 3rd Corps and for the 2nd Armored Division specifically. But we also did 1st Cav, that we were the 522nd Military Intelligence Battalion, and then later the 4-3 Aviation Regiment, which had helicopter collection and jamming. But my job was a collection and jamming guy. So you'd collect intelligence, radio traffic of the other side, the enemy, in our view back then, all Russian for us. We had Polish, we had Russian, all kinds of Eastern European, but the Polish were our enemies too, way back then. And the Bulgarians, anybody in the Eastern Bloc, so we had all these linguists from different areas, and I happened to be the Russian version. And we had to learn how to collect traffic from them and then jam. And jamming of a radio signal basically is creating a more powerful radio signal that drowns out the radio signal and putting it in with all you'd hear is, for example, we used a platform that we pulled on a trailer behind a Ford Bronco, basically, or a Chevy Blazer, depending on which one it was. And we would haul it behind. There was a little small trailer, and it was a generator, powerful generator that you could hook up. And it would transmit on whatever frequency setting you wanted it to transmit, and you could drown them out, and you would hear, like you'd hear that noise on your instead of somebody going no vtoroya, no piati priom, you'd hear all that you could jam them so they couldn't talk to each other, and every time they would start to talk, you'd push the jammer, and it would just drown them out. Okay, so that's what the highly technical bit of jamming is. There's a lot of technology that goes into it, and at the time we were developing text capabilities that they wouldn't know that you were sending out a text, or you would get packets of information that were sent to you and they wouldn't open until you got them, and then the voice would come up. It wasn't a typical radio. So there are plenty of things that have developed over the years that allow people to communicate still without collection and jamming. Well, now collection and jamming is totally different. The Russians have a very, very powerful jamming, and what they have done is they've learned how to jam Ukrainian drones. Okay, so they can drone them. A drone comes over, they're all on radio frequency, and so they jam the particular radio frequencies that are operating the drones, and the drone drops in the sky, because it's not getting the information it needs to keep on going. And so now the technology is a million times further than where it was before. And I was never any technical god anyway back then. All I knew is if I pushed the button, it worked. It worked. And maybe I should have known a little bit more, but I was not a technology guy. That's what we had tech guys for, and I'm just like, hey, man, button's not working. There you go. We're not able to hear, fix it, whatever. And I didn't do it. Well, now the Russians have come up with basically wire guided. So they're wire guided, and their drones have been far more successful against the Ukrainians than the Ukrainians have been against the Russians, at least until the last few months. So way back when, I had reported that Russia had figured out and had stolen some of the Starlink terminals of Ukraine or Ukrainian soldiers. They would take them and use them, and they were able to therefore be in the same settings and use the same things because the Starlink is there. Russia, meanwhile, has put its own, I forget what it's called, Sputnik, I think, but I don't remember that Sputnik went up, and it has its whatever it is. It's not very many. There are thousands of what do you call it? Starlink drones up, or Starlink satellites up there. And Russia is trying to compete and starting to do it. And now there's satellite jamming. So they're jamming of particular satellites. And so started with saying that Ukraine has been bombing and droning and doing everything it can on the supply lines in Crimea along the Black Sea. And it's been damaging Russia more so than they have done previously. They've also been doing attacks inside of Russia with Starlink, okay? And that once these things are targeted properly using Starlink, or, whatever sources they're using, Western sources, but the majority of it is Starlink, then they can fly across the border and not necessarily have to communicate with the Starlink satellites once they're targeted, and the targeting is confirmed through Starlink. So that's kind of a background of where we have been, okay? So there's a new system that it's been being developed over the last year or so called Volna Kupol Garant, and this system is a counter Starlink system. And so it doesn't turn off Starlink in the ordinary sense, but what it does is it deafens, it jams a particular satellite during its pass over any electronic warfare zone. So the system is made up of 8 satellite dishes. It is modular and can be modified or mounted on equipment. And what they do is they put it inside of 4 mini shipping containers, like the little ones that U-Haul would drop off at your house, and you load them up and then they pick them up later. So the small shipping containers. And so the key point to remember here is that, I understand a little bit about the technology because of my military background. Jamming has changed. The software is different. Satellites are different. Drones are definitely different. Beaming is different. But the old truth still remains the same. Okay, the old truth is this. In order to jam somebody, you have to radiate. And to radiate effectively, you yourself are visible. So, when we were a jamming team way back when, using a Tilke 17 Alpha or a TAC jam or something like this, then these are big. Or even in a helicopter, because we could jam from a helicopter, and that was entertaining because when we first got them, we'd push jam, and the avionics of the helicopter would crap out, and you'd start diving, and the pilots would go, "Take your finger off the button." It was nuts. We were testing them in California, and I was on the testing team, and it was like, holy crap. And then when we were the first place to get them in Fort Hood at the 4-3 Aviation Regiment, got these platforms called Quick Fix. And so you could collect radio signals, but you could also jam. But by God, the pilots were like, you're in the airplane and they say, don't use your phone or whatever. Well, I don't use my phone because I saw what happened. Once it happened, well, it doesn't matter. That's a different story. But you don't jam inside. And there are now planes that jam and stuff like that. But boy, you got to protect those. They got to be shielded massive, or you fry the equipment. That's a powerful signal, especially a TAC jam. TAC jam could take out a radio station and literally fry their equipment. That was years ago. So I assume that now if they wanted to, EMP you, they probably could with some of this. And anyway, the Russians have always had very, very strong jamming and collection technologies as well. And this new Volna Kupol Garant system is meant to counter the Starlink, but it doesn't turn it off. Remember, it just tries to fry it out. But the same thing, when we would jam, you'd have to jam, and then that's why it was a mini. You didn't want to be in a TAC jam. You had to take down all the equipment. That was a half an hour takedown, right? And you'd learn to do it in 10, 15 minutes and get the hell out of there so that you wouldn't jam and then get blown up because you're instantly visible yourself, and you could pinpoint where the location was that somebody's jamming from. So the Russians, when they send out these pretty expensive systems containing 6 containers of antennas, of satellite dishes, of stuff like that go out, they're being attacked. Okay, because they're visible. As soon as you jam a satellite, trust me, they know where you are. And so they're losing these systems as well. And so, everybody's always developing the technology in the next level of it. So under the old Tilke 17 Alpha or the TAC jam that I was familiar with, the trade-off was always power versus exposure. If you could radiate hard enough to interfere with the enemy system, you could possibly knock them off long enough to save your own ass. And so that was the goal, was jam the crap out of them so they couldn't find you. But there's always somebody else, but you're jamming the whole frequency. But if you're on different frequency, it doesn't do you much good, does it? And so, but you have created a signature that's going to be collected, geolocated, mapped, and eventually attacked. That part has not changed at all. What is changing is geometry. Old-time jamming focused on terrestrial radio, radar, line of sight. When we got in the helicopters, it was a million times better because there were no interference with mountains. We could, an ellipse, the error of ellipse, of the elliptical error circle, which was 1 kilometer if you're using 3 vehicles spaced a mile apart, was a hell of a lot different than if you're in 3 helicopters, 5,000 or 2,000 feet in the air and spread out over a couple, 3 miles. Those lines of sight are direct, and so you knew within 10 feet of where where it was, and you could jam them. So you want the larger ellipse if you're on the receiving end, but when you're on the attacking end, you don't want it. And so the helicopter improved it, and I imagine satellites, the satellite that can read the date off a dime with one of their cameras surely can pinpoint where the hell you are anyway, and a hell of a lot quicker. So this is a developing technology for sure. And Starlink adds a moving, low Earth orbit constellation, directional user terminals, narrow beam, changing satellites they switch, frequency agility, software updates online. So the battle isn't simply jam the radio, it's which link are you attacking, what satellite downlink, what user terminal uplink, what are the terminal electronics, GPS navigation, drone control links, or the operator's local network. What are you trying to get? And there's so many variables, it's got to be quite difficult. And so both sides are competing with this right now. Now, allegedly, this Volna Kupol Garant will jam over a 20-kilometer area. And so the effective zone under these conditions, it's not some kind of magic bubble that they can protect everything for 20 kilometers. That's not what's going on. A jammer can affect certain frequencies, certain directions, receivers, a link, and it can degrade a Starlink terminal in the zone without jamming everything in the zone. And it might affect terminals whose antennas are looking through a jammer's energy field toward a specific satellite. That's possible. So it can affect one class of links and leave other communications functional. So in short, a jammer doesn't create some kind of cartoon dome where, everybody's protected inside, where all electronics die. It creates interference against specific signals. And, how do you do this at the targeting session? And so what's happening is, so there are 6 of these containers. They're spaced apart with different, they're in the same general vicinity, like a large field or something, but they're spaced apart. And what's happening is drones are coming in and knocking out one of them. If you can knock out one of the 6, then the whole system isn't working. And it's a very, very expensive system. And so, I don't know, the war continues on there. If the jammer is working, you might ask, how does a drone get through to destroy it? But at a high level, it's definitely possible, because the drone doesn't need to live in Starlink all the way to the target. Like I said before, it has pre-programmed routing, inertial navigation, optical visual guidance. Could be a rail system like not a rail system, a wire-guided system like they have with some of the Russian versions. I know Ukraine's been trying to build some of those too. A jammer can be powerful, but usually it's directional, intermittent, frequency limited, or optimized against one link, which leaves another available. But always remember, a jammer's greatest strength is also its greatest weakness. It has a very large RF signature, and if you can't find it on your dial, you're not looking, because it'll show up as a huge spike. Collection assets can detect it, classify it, and build a location estimate. Even if it's an estimate, we always used to say, we always used to go, well, take out the grid square, because we don't have any data that leads us to a tiny, 10-foot ellipse of where this is. We can only tell you it's within this grid square, so take out the grid square. And, along comes the artillery, takes out the whole grid square, and that's that. But it doesn't mean that every strike succeeds. It means the jammer has joined the battlefield is a high-value emitter. I know that our collection platform on the, for example, we had something called a Turkey 32 Victor, TRQ 32 Victor, had a long antenna, just the antenna way back then. And it froze when I took it to Alaska. It freaking froze and shattered the whole. What a bunch of crap that was. And it was a really crappy for cold weather. And it locked into space because condensation gets stuck in there when you pneumatically raise this antenna. And then it would fall and it shattered the whole thing. And there were like 12 sections that were 3 feet apiece to get you to 36 feet in the air with this antenna and collecting all the stuff. And it was pneumatically raised. And so when it fell down and the air went out of it and the condensation melted away inside, the whole thing slammed down and the whole antenna shattered, and each section of the antenna was well over $100,000 to $150,000, and so it was like a $1.5 million antenna, and that didn't include any of the electronics inside the hut that we worked in. Anyway, and now it's even worse. These systems cost multi-millions of dollars, and then they get bombed in one day, and that's what's happening with Patriots. The war is changing, and everybody wants these, and people are having serious trouble defending against these C4 drones, that come in with a pound of C4 and blow up a building, and you can't track them, or you find them too late. The Russians have developed some laser technology to knock them out of the sky, and they've done pretty well with it, but you can't find them all. And they're knocking down probably 80% on both sides, but that's still 20% that's kicking the crap out of people. So Russians are saying that Starlink has become a battlefield weapon, not just a civilian internet system. And they are very anti-Starlink. And they think that using Starlink as a military platform to coordinate Ukrainian actions, a private citizen picking between winners and losers and what he feels like is like worse than being an oligarch. It's worse than, I'm in charge, and you don't have to worry about being in charge. You still get to do what you want. What's the government going to force you to do something? And who owns space? I mean, that's a bigger question. Who owns space? I don't know. From that perspective, a counter Starlink system is a logical answer to a satellite-enabled battlefield. So, I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about all of that, but it's not good. I wanted to talk a little bit about, like I had told you earlier, the enriched uranium and Ukraine. Okay, there's a story that I read a little while ago. Hang on, we have a possibility of a reasonable caller. Let's see. Hello, caller. Are you going to answer the phone today, or are we going to hear chirps and clicks again? Hello? Nope. Chirps, clicks. I got nothing. No, I got nothing. That's a very bad connection. Don't know what the hell that means, but there you have it. Sorry, caller. At any rate, we aren't going to get a perspective from another person, so you're going to get mine. So the UK is... Let's talk about this. So the UK is getting ready to transfer enriched uranium to Ukraine, okay? And it's a big deal on the heels of the G7 of what they're talking about. But according to them, they are not, now it's not openly transferring weapons-grade uranium or giving Ukraine enrichment technology, but it's backing a 210 million pound export finance deal through a company called Urenco to supply enriched uranium, nuclear fuel support to Ukraine's state nuclear company Energoatom for civilian power plants, allegedly. Okay, now this is the same thing that Iran's been doing forever. And you're not allowed to have any enriched uranium, but you have to have some to have a civilian nuclear power plant. You got to have it. And nobody is going to complain about what's going on with Ukraine at all. But Ukraine is actively seeking nuclear weapons right now. They're doing it. It's a underground policy for them. This is their policy. They felt they shouldn't have signed the Budapest Accords. And back in whatever year it was, 91, when they got gave up their nuclear weapons to Russia, and they wish they hadn't, and so they have their own. And by the way, they are also watching what has happened with Israel. You know, just like Pakistan, just like North Korea. You know, they have their own nuclear technology, which they picked up on their own. And if you don't think that Ukraine, Finland, that all these people aren't going to try to do it on their own, they are. This is where we're going. Nuclear non-proliferation only counts if you don't like the person getting that it's being proliferated to, right? And so now it's Ukraine. But Ukraine's the same as Iran. They got a dictator living there. They got a guy who isn't a constitutionally appropriate leader. They got a guy who is jailing his opposition, who is destroying the public sphere, controlling who gets to say what, and controlling the religion, taking over ancient churches. This is bad news. The official version of England is, we're not doing anything. We're just giving them civilian use uranium. So, but this is still political hypocrisy, no matter how you slice it. So the deal is this. UK announced to Ukraine a £210 million energy support package at the G7 meetings, saying it's going to help power Ukraine for the next 2 years by giving it UK nuclear fuel support. The deal involves Urenco, a uranium enrichment company partly owned by the UK, supplying enriched uranium and nuclear fuel support to Energoatom. The World Nuclear News describes the structure as a UK guarantee of a $210 million loan. Yeah, like they're ever going to get paid back. Covering supplies of enriched uranium to Energoatom. Urenco previously described Energoatom as a long-term customer and said UK support had already given enrichment services to Ukraine, noting that nuclear power generates over half of Ukraine's electricity. I'm quite a bit more skeptical, but the core facts remain that UK is going to supply $280 million about. So basically, this is not Starmer handing Ukraine a nuclear bomb. It's a state-backed nuclear arrangement supply, but it sure as hell doesn't stop the debate, especially from a nuclear armaments reduction person like me. So Ukraine has a functioning nuclear power plant. Russia has repeatedly attacked Ukraine's broader energy infrastructure, just like Ukraine's doing in reverse. Ukraine wants to reduce dependence on Russian nuclear fuel and Russian enrichment. Urenco is a Western supplier. Civilian reactor fuel is normally low enriched uranium, not weapons grade. Have we heard that argument before, friends and neighbors? I believe we have heard that argument before. I think with relation to Iran. Curious. Iran has nuclear power for civilian purposes. Oh my God. The IAEA says low enriched uranium suitable for typical light water reactors is enriched up to about 4.9% uranium-235. The World Nuclear Association similarly says current reactor fleet primarily use uranium enrichment up to 5%. That's the technical defense. It's a civilian nuclear reactor under safeguards for electricity. Okay? Same as in Iran, by the way. The NPT also allows peaceful nuclear energy. So non-proliferation doesn't exclude nuclear power for civilian purposes. The IAEA describes the Non-Proliferation Treaty as built around three goals: preventing nuclear weapons spread, promoting peaceful nuclear energy, and advancing disarmament, none of which are occurring in Ukraine. Ukraine is also under an IAEA safeguard agreement, an additional protocol framework. The IAEA report discussed safeguards implementation in Ukraine and its related nuclear non-proliferation related agreement. So the criticism is that this is, and I don't say this is an automatically illegal deal. What I say, my criticism is that the West applies its own brand of trust-based non-proliferation to dictators like Zelensky, and a completely different to somebody that Israel doesn't like. If Israel doesn't like you, by God, the U.S. is going to treat you a million times differently. There is, once again, rules for thee, but not for me. Rules for, there are rules that mean the U.S. must seize force, must use force everywhere. But they'll never force Ukraine to do anything. They'll never force Pakistan. They're not going to. Those people have already figured out how to get around it. And if Iran does, it's a different world too, right? I'm not saying everybody should get nuclear weapons, but do you want Finland to have a nuclear weapon pointed at Russia? I sure as hell don't. Do you want Ukraine? Do you want Vladimir Zelensky, who has shown what he will do by bombing beaches with fragmentation grenades on a Sunday afternoon where there isn't a military target remotely nearby that'll kill 180 people, or bomb a school in Russia, or do these things? This is the man that would push that trigger. Netanyahu too. That's what I believe. The end justifies the means, and if we got to kill your children to make you see that we're the evildoers, well, so be it. Because that's what we are. We believe in genocide for others, not for us. We believe in killing all Russians. Why? Because they're Russian. We believe in killing all Palestinians, all Lebanese. This is what we do. All Iranians. This is it. Because why? Because we're Israeli. I mean, God chose us, and which means God chose America too, but after He chose us, and so therefore, we're both God's chosen, and the rest of the world are a bunch of freeloading a-holes living on our world. What are they doing living on our world? We need to destroy them, and we can proliferate to who we want to, and they cannot. And rules apply to them because we made them, but they never apply to us. And Israel doesn't have to be part of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Why would you? Why would we? We hid the fact that we got it anyway. So why wouldn't we not want to proliferate to wherever we feel like? And that's what they do. So anyway, same old crap. Iran's position has always been, we also have a right to peaceful nuclear energy under the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty. They don't have that. Now, allegedly, they've said, we're not doing this to create weapons grade. Now, over here, you'll hear the lies that, oh, geez, they're 2 steps away from, but those steps are 50 years in between. The steps aren't, oh, gee, they got a nuclear weapon right now, because they don't. We don't trust your enrichment level, your transparency, your policy, or your possible military intent. But nobody will say crap about Ukraine. Hell, we have biological weapons all over there put to you by the United States. We'll look the other way for you, for sure. And non-proliferation, just means one thing when the material is moving toward Ukraine or Finland, and quite another when it's a non-Western state that wants to control its own nuclear potential, whether that's peaceful or not. And, the other side, your Marco Rubios are going to say this is an unfair comparison because Ukraine is receiving fuel for reactors and Iran is enriching uranium to higher levels. The point isn't necessarily imaginary. Iran has produced uranium enriched up to 60%, which is above ordinary civilian reactor fuel and very close to weapons grade in technical terms. AP reports that IAEA had Iran at 182.3 kilograms of uranium enriched up to 60% in 2024. And later reported that the IAEA lost continuity of knowledge over Iran's near weapons grade stockpiles after 2025. So Ukraine, who has stated the same goal, they want nuclear weapons, especially under the Green Goblin. The West says the distinction in enrichment level and safeguards, but you got to trust everybody. We're supposed to trust them, but nobody else. And frankly, I don't. And I don't trust Ukraine at all. I don't trust what we do in Ukraine. We've shown what we're going to do there. And we're going to supply bioweapons. We're going to supply biological diseases that we just provide to them in Ukraine. Why? Why do we trust those guys? That makes because they're against Russia. That's it. That is the only reason. And why do we? So let me ask you this. Here's a curious question for you. What if Iran came out and said, we're against Russia too? Tell you what, we'll help you go after Russia. Does that mean they can have a nuclear weapon? What if Iran joined NATO? Could Iran get nuclear weapons? And say, Turkey, is supposedly going to house, they've put it off so far, if I recall, but housing U.S. nuclear weapons. I personally think it's a terrible idea to put nuclear weapons on the border of Russia and Finland. I think that's idiocy. And but the Europeans are on. They want this war with Russia badly. They want it. Well, let's take a piece-by-piece comparison of that just for grins, okay? Enrichment level, the Ukraine deal, they say civilian power plants. Iran says civilian power plants. So it matters because both can claim peaceful use. The enrichment level, Ukraine, it's publicly implied reactor grade and around ordinary commercial fuel grade. Publicly. But publicly, there weren't any biolabs either. Let's see. Iran dispute. Now, but of course, IAEA, they haven't inspected any of this stuff in Ukraine. They don't have to. But Iran has enriched up to 60% according to IAEA. That's the biggest change. Supplier, Urenco, Iran's own enrichment infrastructure. And it matters because they allegedly can control the suppliers if they're controlling England. Ukraine is under IAEA. Iran is under IAEA. But after the Trump bombings of last year, they can't verify. And verification is extremely difficult these days. The political alignment is the most important double standard. You can do whatever you want if you're in the West, and we want to hide the fact that we're putting 40 bioweapon sites on Ukraine. That's allowed. But by God, you can't have even a question of us not being able to inspect your own country, your country, if we don't like you. And we want to go in and check it out. And what are you hiding from us? Open up all of your underground bunkers. Open up everything. And just trust us. Trust me. I'm with the Western-based government, right? You should believe me. I do not. That's me, though. You wouldn't want them in your own basement, would you? You going to trust these guys? Never. Proliferation. I think proliferation is a worse likelihood from Ukraine than it is from Iran. Iran might do it for themselves. Ukraine will do it for themselves and then want to spread it all over the planet. I disagree with thinking that Ukraine is some kind of noble democracy, because they're not. Never have been, by the way. That's been one of the big problems with sucking them into NATO and the EU, which now they're going to do anyway. You can be a dictator there. That's perfectly fine. And all that matters, the only qualification you need to be a leader in Ukraine or anywhere in the Baltics or any place lining against Russia is anti-Russia. And the EU will spend all kinds of money to get that done. And I wonder what's going to happen when they do start this war. The Western framing of both of these is what the funny part is we're willing to hide the non-proliferation argument completely in the West and say that, well, in Ukraine, that's just energy resilience, and they're trying to, it is clearly energy, but if Iran has any, it's a nuclear threat, they're building a bomb, and they were 2 days from a bomb, and Lindsey Graham, I got all the technical information right here. I have all the evidence. Yeah, there it is. So what's the best pro-Western argument that we could possibly make? We could say this. It's unreasonable to think that, because Ukraine is, certainly Ukraine is not enriching its own uranium, and certainly not to the level of 60%. They're not building a secret fuel cycle. And Ukraine gave up its Soviet nuclear weapons after independence. Now, unfortunately, it has said flat out, we want them back. And we should have never given them up in the first place. And that is our goal. We want to be nuclear. Zelensky said it repeatedly. So the argument that we're only doing this for Western power sources, this is what's happening. So the West is not applying a neutral non-proliferation principle, which is what I learned in the military, the non-proliferation treaty. It is applying a political trust test. Ukraine receives enriched uranium during a war, and they call it energy security, even though they're specifically saying we want nuclear weapons, and why are you keeping them from us? And boy, if we join NATO, you could park them on our back door too, on a front door to Russia. And Iran is insisting the same things. They want their own nuclear sovereignty. They want the same thing as Ukraine. But that's called a global emergency. If the real rule is all nuclear material in a war zone has to be treated with extreme caution, then Ukraine should trigger more concern than Western officials admit. And they'll never admit it. This is all just peachy. In fact, nobody's even reporting on it. And Ukraine is not an ordinary peaceful environment. It's a country of war. It's got damaged infrastructure, corruption everywhere. It abounds. Emergency governance, dictatorship, foreign intelligence involvement, everything. They're getting everything from everyone. And nuclear facilities already at the center of military danger. Hell, you could argue that Chernobyl was a Ukrainian mistake as much as it was a Russian one. And they're all Ukrainians that live there. Who caused it? If we're gonna get that obsessive with it, you think that they don't have the technology? They have it. I tell you what, This doesn't mean that Ukraine is building a bomb, but it means a casual tone of, oh, geez, we're going to sell them this enriched uranium. That shouldn't, that should raise some alarms, The weakest thing is to call, for my own argument, is to call this arms proliferation, because it's not. This is only the peaceful purposes, allegedly. But those arguments are dismissed when you use it in the same sentence with the word Iran. And you're comparing apples and oranges is what they're going to say. But Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons. Israel's got nuclear weapons. Nobody says a word. And again, I very much believe that Israel will be far more likely to use them than Iran would be. So there you have it. Let's see. I think I had one more piece. The drone war, the tactical irritation, the desperation of Ukraine, or is it the future of war? I brought to you nuclear concerns, the drone war. Ukraine is not winning the conventional ground war at the front, but it has developed a long-range drone and media war that is designed to create psychological pressure, force Russia to divert air defense assets, hit fuel infrastructure. Another oil field was, or oil refinery in outside Moscow was hit yesterday. Lid blew off, and produced, these drone events, these drone attacks, and these rear events of Ukraine attacking Russia has allowed the narrative, the propaganda, to twist to pro-Ukrainian again and keep the Western aid flowing, more importantly. And so that's not nothing, but it's also not the same thing as retaking territory, breaking Russian formations, or changing the frontline balance. All of those are still heavily in Russia's favor. So the Moscow attacks, major Ukrainian drone operations, hundreds of drones and cruise missiles, and then they get to call it a victory. But it's only a media victory. It isn't a battlefield victory. These are gnats on the ass of an elephant. That's what it is. And, it's still harmful, still hurts all kinds of things. But Russian forces are continuing to improve their positions. Now they're right near Druzhkova and Kramatorsk. I mean, it's crazy, and nobody's reporting on it. They're next to Sumy. I mean, it's happening. And the Guardian describes the Moscow refinery strike as Ukraine's biggest air raid on the Russian capital, and says the Kropotnya refinery was hit, but that Russia continues advancing in Donetsk. I mean, it's not going to stop them from advancing. Business Insider gives a statement as follows. Ukraine's drone industry and battlefield software are creating momentum, disrupting Russian logistics, and shaping a new phase of the war. But that argument is essentially drones, disruptions, technology. Not any sort of broad Ukrainian conventional breakthrough, and nothing about people that remain. The Europe 2029 and 30 point, I say the Europe plans to join the war. And Europe is openly building towards a 2029-30 defense readiness. I think it's more of an offense readiness. And they're talking as if direct confrontation with Russia is inevitable by the end of the decade. NATO's Hague Summit declaration says the spending trajectory is going to be reviewed again in 2029, and direct contributions to Ukraine's defense industry count toward allied defense spending. How about that? That's crazy. But let me tell you this. Ukraine is not winning on the front lines. It's using drones to create strategic irritation, media oxygen, and pressure on Russia's rear areas while waiting for Europe to militarize itself and wait until 2029 and 2030 and do it all over again. Or if they can potentially, keep the front lines active until then, that's the plan. And that's sad but true, friends and neighbors. My name is Samuel Trapp. This is International Flavor. Damn glad you were here today, playing along. This is the last show of the week for me for International Flavor. Tomorrow is Civic Outlaws, 7 a.m. to 8:30 for me. Should be interesting. I will be here then. Thank you for joining, and have a very nice mid-Missouri day.